I don't know if anybody's heard of them. It wasn't my idea. I came across it, and there's a lot about it on the net. And they're taking off all around the UK. Death has always been a subject that fascinated me, and I'm going to start with a poem that I wrote about an elderly lady in the west of Ireland. And it's called Death Come Gently. You knew how to do it. You knew how to die. It took a week. Gave them time to come from England, Scotland. Gave them time to paper the front room. Time for their neighbours to pay their last respects. I actually saw her the Sunday before too, just to say goodbye. You had danced enough jigs in your black boots, sang enough songs for the tourists, baked enough cakes of bread on your turf fire, slept enough cold nights with your hat kept on, and seen your son from America after 40 years. You knew. You knew when the time was right. You knew when to die. Well, of course, that brings up lots of questions. Do we know? Do we have any choice at all? And if so, how? I'd like to put a question to you first, so I'd love anybody here to put up their hand who isn't going to die. Okay? We're all in this. We are all going to die. Why are we so scared to talk about it? It's become a taboo subject for some reason in our culture. And when something becomes taboo, it's sort of like a wasp's nest, and we're too scared to go anywhere near it. But isn't it lovely to be able to change that? I was totally fascinated by this idea of death cafe. I've just had two wonderful visions of what people saw. One was sitting in a cafe in strychnine in their coffee. And the other was this sort of the cadaver, whatever it is, in the middle of the cafe where you all sit round. But it isn't exactly like that. The idea of the cafe is that you have a comfortable, impersonal place where you can sit and talk to people that you may know, you may not know, in small groups, in different tables around the place, and then maybe share some of that afterwards. But anything that you want to talk about death. One important thing to realise, it's not a support group or a counselling group. Those are things that are going on as well, and obviously you can feed off it and find out maybe about them. But the actual Death Cafe is just a place where you can talk about death. And do you think there are things to talk about? The more I talk about it to people, the more I find to talk about. For instance, I thought that I was working towards having the courage to die alone. I thought that was rather good, so that I didn't sort of impose my death on other people. But one of my richest experiences recently was being with my aunt when she died. Actually died, and I was able to help her. And I felt so honoured to be there. And I thought, good heavens, maybe my children would like to be with me when I die. So I thought it's a bit mean to want to not happen. So it made me start to look at that differently. And I need to ask them. Even my grandchildren might like to be with me. Anyway, my main position here this morning is hoping that I might find one or two people who are interested enough to have a core group with me, so that we can then coordinate a cafe and a date and publicise that. There will be a few words of it coming out in the community news. And you may have questions. I may not have said half the relevant things.
That's fine. Has anyone got any questions for Eliza? That's not
comments, not questions. There are parts of Indonesia where they don't dress in black, they dress in white and have parties because death is something to be celebrated. the other thing, much more serious, Jo came down, got me nursed my dear wife for many months. After she died, saw an old friend in the street who crossed the road to avoid speaking to me. And later on admitted, well, we didn't know what to say. And it hurt.
Mm.
But I think it's true of us all. We very often don't know what to say, do we? And if you can get together, maybe it's a much better thing.
Yes.
I wish you well.
Thank you very much.